Thank you so much for setting up the scene. I'm really impressed by how quickly changes can be made here. But the topic still stays the same, and we are staying on stage for the topic that is so concerning for all of us. What is happening in cyberspace, and in particular, what is happening in Ukraine, and what can we do in terms of international support for Ukraine in cyberspace? But also, I would add very much, what can we learn from what's happening in Ukraine? Because this is actually a message, as it also says in the introduction to this session, about what the West can do, what the West should do in terms of not only strengthening its industrial capacities and its production of defense material, but also facilitating in cyberspace intelligence sharing, training, the development of innovative technologies, better protection in cyberspace. And there are several ways to do this, and we will talk about several of these with the ambassador. Very pleased that you are here. Thank you very much, Tadeusz. And with Yuri as co-founder and as CTO of an important company that you also see on the stand here of IIT Distribution, of which there's a stand here. So recommended to also talk to these important personalities as you have the opportunity to do so. So I will use a few questions for this debate, and let's try to do this a bit interactively and see where we get to. So first of all, Ambassador, there is a lot of international cooperation, of course, happening, but one of the most recent ones is what is called the Tallinn Mechanism. And that's an important development in terms of international support for Ukraine and cooperation, I would think probably in a two-way direction. So I would like to ask you that you explain to us in, say, 5 minutes what the Tallinn Mechanism is about and what your view is on where that should be heading.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Paul, for the question. When the current aggression phase of Russia on Ukraine started, we have been seeing that cyberspace has become a very important dimension of this war. Just at the hours before the aggression, there was a Russian attack on the satellite network, which has a spillover effect on many countries in Europe, including Poland. And then the cyber attacks are integral part of the Russian war in Ukraine. So from the very beginning, a number of the countries which decided to support Ukraine in their right war to defend their sovereignty, including in cyberspace, we offered our help. The problem was how to coordinate that help. A number of countries offered to do something, but we didn't know what we were doing, in fact. And we didn't know what are the needs of Ukraine. Ukraine has prepared the list of needs and presented it even to the European Union 1 week before the war. However, this list of needs were written for the peacetime, not for the wartime. So we had a hard time to identify how the priorities of Ukraine has changed in the face of the kinetic, open, large-scale aggression. Everybody was doing something bilaterally, so did Poland. But there was a moment when we thought we need to coordinate it better, not to overlap the efforts, not to come up with the same actions towards the same goals, but also to cover white spots on this map of the needs. So we started talking among a group of 10 countries, all NATO members, how we can help to support the cybersecurity independence and defense in the civilian sector for the Ukraine. In the same time, we talked to the Ukrainian friends and partners. You need to get somehow better coordinated in creation of the list of the needs. You know best what is absolutely necessary now to help you to defend your cyberspace from the attacks, what is needed in the medium term time, what is your long-term needs. So it was very difficult. It is difficult for any country. Any country, if I wonder if any country can present right away a list of priorities for their needs in cyberspace, which are categorized by the importance, the time, and whatever other criteria. It's very difficult. It's still in many countries a very siloed approach to cybersecurity. It's very difficult to build a one united list for the whole country. So with Ukraine being under the war, being in the state of war, and the large-scale aggression, it was even more difficult. So it took us some time to come up with what is now the Tallinn Mechanism and functioning Tallinn Mechanism, which is aiming at uh, basically two things in the operational terms. On one hand, the Ukrainian agencies, institutions, government agencies put together the effort to have a synchronized, reviewed list of the needs for the cyber defense of Ukraine in the civilian aspects. On the other hand, the donor countries got organized and start sharing information, what we're actually doing for Ukraine and how we can coordinate it better. Technically, the Tallinn mechanism has a few elements. Uh, the front office is operated by Estonia. Our Estonian colleagues in Kyiv are those who are meeting the Ukrainian partners on the ground in Ukraine. And they share this information with the other members of Tallinn Group, but predominantly with Poland, because Poland is operating what is called in our mechanism a back office, which means we are responsible for collecting all the information about Ukrainian needs from one side and all the offers from the donor countries on the other side, and help to match the needs and the offers. So this is what we are trying to do. Then we try to find out which needs can be covered by individual member states or maybe by cooperation between two or three
Yeah.
states.
Let me stop here for a moment and ask you, so in the Tallinn mechanism you have a short term and a medium term and a long term perspective. And the short term is, I guess, really making sure that you can defend yourself. If we just look at the short term, what would you say is an example of a success of the Tallinn mechanism? What would be one of the success indicators, so to say?
Well, we don't go very much into the details of that, but it's probably not a secret that one of the most urgent needs are not purely cybersecurity, but just the communication. So the providing satellite communication for Ukraine is one of the key elements. This has been done also on a bilateral level. Poland supplied over 20,000 Starlink terminals and even more licenses in other countries, but we adopted it as a part of the Tallinn mechanism needs. Even simple things like renewal of licenses, which is needed to run as a safe software, right? And these things are the simple examples, but there are much more complex
Yeah.
needs as well.
You're mentioning a very kind of important example there. This need to have proper communication, and we also heard it in the previous sessions, and especially kind of like a new dimension that is developing is this need for communication between the civilian and the military sector. And I must say I found it quite remarkable that now also the Deputy Prime Minister and the representative of the European Commission were stressing this need to develop the civilian military cooperation further. So Yuri, if you hear this also about the talent mechanism, and if we say civilian, we can think about really citizens and NGOs and others. We can also think about the private sector. Private sector I'll take with you later. But now, first about, let's say, the involvement of the civil society, the involvement of citizens, the involvement of NGOs, perhaps the involvement also of hackers, of white hackers, white, blue teaming, red teaming. You have experience actually on the ground also in this respect in Ukraine. What's your view on that? Is that useful? Can they make a meaningful contribution, or are they actually kind of getting in the way?
Thank you for the question. It's obviously it's useful because in the given circumstances it's very hard to distinguish. Yeah. So where is the military ended and the civilian started? Yeah. And for in my opinion, yeah, for now it's built on that cooperation, yeah, because so a lot of people from the very beginning they were like volunteers. Afterwards, you know that it was a little more organized way, yeah, but still it's like some, I would say, room for improvement, yeah, some things which supposed to be done. It's very actually the Tallinn initiative and this intention to make the process of delivering the stuff, the needed stuff, in a clear, understandable, transparent way is a very good initiative. Because if you think about the war, not only about like this cybersecurity, the war is like a really hardly manageable house. Yeah, and when we started from the house in some initiative, everything was done on the, let's say, on the level of the connections. Yeah, I was involved in many cases where we asked the help directly from some companies and we got it. Yeah, or directly from some governments.
Can you give an example that you can share?
that's that's the delivery of cybersecurity solution for SBU. Like I would not give the example, okay? But it's a government, European government, Nordic government, who paid directly and made it like happen in a month. When it was like, you know, because from the very beginning you should stop the fire, and afterwards you should start like thinking about how build something more sustainable. Yeah. When it was the fire, the role of private business, the role of I wouldn't call it like a citizen. I would call it a cyber community, because it's like a big cyber community in Ukraine. People who is doing like different job, red teaming, blue teaming. So everybody is doing like in different way, but everybody try to help. Yeah. In my example, so we started like to give some soft for free for everybody who needs it, without any distinguish other like government entity, non-government entity, whatever. Yeah, because we probably discuss it after. What is, in my opinion, now is really out of the scope and like missing part is like private business, not civilian infrastructure with this critical infrastructure because of the nature, but also a lot of civilian business,
Yeah.
which not, let's say, constructor, or they don't have any relation to government, they don't have any relation to military, but by the nature, this is very critical business. The good example is it's like Nova Poshta. You know, it's like Ukrainian DHL, yeah. So the company which make it logistic, and 95% of people in Ukraine, at least once in his life, use it. So they have a database of all the Ukrainians with the passports, phone numbers, with everything. Moreover, these guys deliver to the front line, constantly deliver to the front line millions of tons of different stuff, because everything which is out of the scope of real military stuff, yeah, like ammunition which like cannot be purchased in the shop, yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean the needs, they're way bigger. If you think about it, you need the spare parts for your cars, you need some ammunition, you need a lot of stuff, and they're moving the stuff, so they handle really critical information, but they cannot be considered as a supplier of the army. They're not supplier of the army.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not supplier of the government. But if you think about what they have, and if I would be Russian, so I would start from that company,
Yeah.
because they know all the movements on the front line, they know what is moving, what direction, and they can easily say, like, yeah, that's brigade moving this direction.
Yeah.
Just based on the information when the guy, or the guys, yeah, started delivering, starting receiving their parcels.
So are you also saying that the private sector is actually, well, the military is actually learning a lot from the private sector also, because they do, for example, this logistics management in a highly professional way, to some extent perhaps even in a more sophisticated way than you can do it in the military environment, but it also provides fallback solutions and etc. So we have heard this debate before that it is a two-way street between the private and the military sector. Is it? Is it a two-way street?
Actually, for now, for military, for paramilitary organizations in Ukraine who is responsible for the cybersecurity, because there are like plenty of them, which is, in my opinion, not good way to do this. But for them now, it's the best time to have the best talented. I mean, they would never afford themselves to have these people in the team.
Yeah.
Never ever. Okay. Now they have these people in the team, and the red team and the blue team, they have the best people, absolutely the best people who is doing the job, not because of money, because I mean, it's not about money. Yeah. So you don't have like a decent salary like $500, which is, I mean, not the reason to be involved in that. Yeah. So they would never. I'm really afraid what's going to happen after the war will be over. Yeah. All that people will leave these organizations and they like coming back to the level on which they were like before the war.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So that's also another task for that people to build something to teach the younger generation who is involved, like, you know, who wants to pursue the career in the military or like some
I guess
SBU or whatsoever.
that's an important message, the message of sustainability or what's happening after the war is over. So in a certain sense, the Tallinn mechanism is now really focused on this collaboration, but it's wider than that. You might say it's in the West, countries are learning from it. You need to look beyond it. Today, you also have experience with the cooperation between Poland and Ukraine outside the Tallinn mechanism. There's a lot more happening there. Can you say something what we learned from it? Some examples, perhaps?
On the bilateral level.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, we were assuming that the Russian aggression, full, we didn't expect that full-scale aggression, but the military aggression may start 2 years ago, and it did. And in preparations for that, we actually started talking bilaterally to Ukraine about enhancing cyber defense cooperation in October 21. Actually, I hosted in Minister of Foreign Affairs a delegation from the Ukrainian cybersecurity sector, government agencies, to discuss how we can prepare for this aggression, how we can assist Ukraine when this aggression happens. I also wanted to praise Ukraine for the uh, work done between 2014 aggression and 2022 aggression. A lot has improved in the cybersecurity of Ukraine, but of course this is never ending story to improve your cyber security, cyber defense system. So in October 21 we started discussing how we can assist. And even before the kinetic aggression started, I held the interagency meetings in Poland, asking my colleagues from different agencies to think how we can assist. And then we prepared a bilateral cooperation on cyber security, MOU on cyber security cooperation that we signed in Kyiv in August 22, after the aggression started. Actually, in the shelters, because it was a missile attack when we had the ceremony, so from the big halls with big flats we had go down. But in practical terms, one of the things we started right away was supplying satellite communication, Starlink terminals, but also to protect critical data of Ukraine. So we built a mobile data center to protect some of the critical data of Ukrainian statehood, I would say absolutely necessary for the functioning of the state. And it was again an interesting experience because there was no regulations in Ukraine allowing for this data to be taken out of Ukraine. So we had to work with the government of Ukraine to create a legislative framework to move this data and make a backup of that in Poland and make it operational mobile data center.
Yeah, how
Then we
interesting.
continued with another data center. So these are the examples we were doing bilaterally, but not just in cyber defense. Because of the huge influx of Ukrainian refugees to Poland, which went, we had almost 6 million Ukrainians passing through Poland and 3 million staying in Poland. We focus also on integration of digital services. So for example, the Ukrainian DIA application, which is the online identification system, was merged with our M-Obyvatel, M-Citizen system, so the Ukrainians could use our system to produce driving license,
Yep.
for example.
Yep.
We included Ukrainian citizens staying in Poland to our national ID digital numbering system, which allows these Ukrainians to gain access to the healthcare system or to schools,
Yeah.
and many other examples like that.
Very good concrete examples, and perhaps at a more general level, but that's just as a comment. I guess that you are also a key person in international cyber diplomacy. This must also really inform your work that you are doing in international cyber diplomacy, because if we are talking about norms that say don't attack critical infrastructure, then you can say this is what we actually mean.
Yeah, indeed. We bring this to the international fora, regional in the OSCE. Poland was the chair of the OSCE this work, and we organized a conference in Łódź in Poland on cybersecurity during our presidency. We also discussed how this Russian aggression and activities, not just kinetic ones, but those in cyberspace, are violating the norms and international law. And we have ongoing continuous discussions in the first committee of the United Nations Open-Ended Working Group, which is now holding in July this next session, where we have to sit in the room with the Russian delegation and discuss how to observe international law in cyberspace, how to observe 11 voluntary norms that all members of the United Nations agreed to implement, yet Russia is violating them every day, not just against Ukraine, of course, but also against us and many other countries.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not limited to that. Also, at the practical side, one of the things that you can do between the private and civil society, private sector, civil society, and the military, and that people are discussing, should you actually do that? Not, I guess, in Ukraine, but informing people, doing perhaps even cyber exercises and those kind of things. In other countries in Europe, it's still being discussed, should you actually really warn citizens about being prepared for war? Well, being prepared for conflict includes also that you do exercises. Is that a useful thing to do between private sector, civil society and military, cyber exercises, or is there simply no time to do it?
Oh, I mean, it's not time for Ukraine for now, but generally it's always better to learn from someone's mistakes, not from your own, yeah? And Ukraine was not prepared at all in the military, in cyber, nowhere, yeah? So you should take some knowledge, some experience out of that, for sure, yeah? Generally, if you're speaking about society, my opinion is that the cybersecurity should be the topic which people, kids learn in school. Yeah, it's like how to behave on the road. They also should learn how to behave in the internet. Okay, so what to do, what not to do. That's obvious stuff. We're in the 21st century and still like do not pay attention to that. But coming back to the war, I mean, you can learn a lot. Yeah, what happened. So where your weak spots, because that's good. You have like protected military infrastructure, they classified information, and etc. etc.
Yep.
Do it everything in the right way. But one more example: day before the war started, our road agency was hacked. Nobody knows, just because war started, everybody forget about that. Yeah, but they got the access to all the CCTV cameras on the roads.
Yep.
So they know where the road, not only like on the map, but also in the reality.
Yep.
Okay? So, and who is going what direction? And
And
this,
it's those concrete examples that you learn
Yeah.
from and that you have to evaluate. And
so
also
you have to understand what's gonna be taken in the first place. It's not like they attack, nobody attack prepared target, okay?
Yeah.
Everybody is looking for a weak spot, and weak spot there are a lot of them, because everything is linked. So the example with Nova Poshta, yeah? Think about bank industry. Every single soldier in Ukrainian army getting salary on the card. If you hack the bank, you see like how many soldiers in Ukrainian
Yeah,
army.
yeah.
You can count every single soldier, okay? Because there are like two biggest banks, they cover 95%. Okay, one bank, like more than a half, I can understand how many people involved in the army, in the military, which is like a top secret information.
Yep.
I don't need to hack the military server. I need like civil society in this case.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, obvious example, Kyivstar. Yeah. So or any mobile operator, people still using like it cannot be government. It cannot be. You don't have military mobile operator. Okay. You're still using the normal
The same. Yep.
normal carrier. Yeah. And you still, if it's vulnerable, everybody knows what happened. I don't know why they did it. If they have such a good access to the operator, so you can just imagine how many useful stuff, how much information then extracted for, I don't know, several months, years.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so because you don't need even to listen what people are talking about.
Perhaps one day we
Like
will.
you know, like how they move
Yeah.
from.
And that's very useful information. And perhaps one day we will know why that happened. Let's get to the final part of this fireside chat. If we look a bit further ahead, the EU is opening accession negotiations with Ukraine. And if we look at the Tallinn Mechanism, it's this cooperation that's about the shorter term, which is really assistance in case of cyber attacks. It's recovering from cyber incidents, cyber attacks. It's also resilience, and resilience we take as the longer term perspective. And obviously, in the European Union and in the European Union with Ukraine, we want to have a resilient society and a resilient economy and a resilient democracy. So what do you think, Tadeusz, could the European Union do, learning from something like the Tallinn Mechanism and from the concrete examples that you gave? What could the European Union do in the perspective of Ukrainian accession on this?
That's a very good point, Paul. And already within the Tallinn mechanism, we look also in long-term targets and objectives for assisting Ukraine. The short term are obvious. I mean, to provide what is needed to protect Ukraine during the aggression. Mid-term is to increase the resilience, and the long term would be to help Ukraine to build a cybersecurity environment in Ukraine which are matching the EU standards. Basically, we are looking into the long-term needs of Ukraine as the way of preparing Ukraine for accession to the European Union. So when we discuss or we planning now, start planning for the long-term needs of Ukraine, we want to pick up the projects which will prepare Ukraine to meet the standards of the European Union when it comes to the requirements for the whole society, be it companies, government, etc., right? Like NIS, NIS directive, etc. So this is embodied in the Tallinn Mechanism activities, in fact, and I think that many results of this horrible war in Ukraine will strengthen, in the result Ukraine will be strengthened in many aspects. It will be much modern, much more resilient, overall resilient, modern and better organized state after the war than before the war. And certainly cybersecurity is a layer across all the activities of our societies, economy, etc. So I'm pretty convinced that this target of making Ukraine matching right away the European standards in view of the memberships of Ukraine will be achieved.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very important kind of message, and perhaps also a moment to wrap up this short fireside chat. If we look at, we could only touch, of course, a little bit upon this cooperation between the civil private sector and the military sector, but we cannot kind of stress enough how important it is for Ukraine, but also important is for the rest of Europe to learn about this, because we are talking about the need for communication, we said that, the need for cooperation, the need to learn, the need to practice, and also the need to think about the long-term perspective. And that's really not only necessary at the acute moment of cyber incidents, but it's actually bigger than that. It's really to protect ourselves for the future, to enable us that we can continue to decide about our own future and about our own sovereignty. And this is really the moment in time that we are taking now the lessons, we learn from it, and we provide actual support and mutual support in this horrible conflict. So I would really like to thank my two panelists, fireside chatters, for their insights in this. And as I said in the beginning, I hope that you take the opportunity to talk to them because there's a lot to be learned. So let's give them a hand and thank you very much.